The first thing I did after dying was not scream, not cry, not pray, and not wonder why the ceiling above me had changed from the white hospital tiles I remembered to the cracked cream paint above my old dormitory bed. The first thing I did was grab my glasses. My hand flew to the little wooden desk beside my pillow, knocking over a stack of flashcards, a tin of mints, and the purple alarm clock I had thrown away 3 years before my life collapsed. My fingers closed around the familiar black frames, warm from the sunlight leaking through the curtains, and for one horrible second I thought I was still hallucinating in that hospital room, still half dead from the fever I'd ignored while tutoring other people's children because no school would hire the girl who cheated in the national recommendation exam. Then the alarm clock shrieked, 5:42 a.m., May 18th, the day of the exam, the day Evelyn Song borrowed my spare glasses with trembling hands and watery eyes, the day she sat 3 rows behind me and copied my life so perfectly that when the invigilators dragged us out, everyone believed I had stolen from her. I sat up so fast my forehead nearly hit the metal frame of the upper bunk. My roommate, Lila, groaned and pulled her blanket over her head, mumbling that I was possessed. I almost laughed. Possessed would have been easier to explain. I was 17 again, wearing the faded blue school t-shirt I had donated after graduation, staring at the admission ticket taped to my wall, my name printed in neat black letters. Naomi Lynn, Examination Room 7, Seat 14. On the chair beneath it hung my pressed uniform jacket, my student badge, and my scholarship interview folder, all untouched by scandal. My hands shook so badly I dropped my glasses onto the blanket, and that tiny click of plastic against cotton sounded louder than the last verdict I ever heard in my first life. Disqualified for academic dishonesty. People imagine revenge begins with fire, knives, screaming confrontations and rain. Mine began with a drawer. I slid off the bed, crossed the cold floor, opened the bottom drawer of my desk, and there they were. My spare glasses, the ones Evelyn would come begging for at 7:10, saying hers broke, saying she couldn't see the blackboard, saying she was so nervous she might vomit, saying only I could help her because we were friends. Friends. The word crawled over my skin like an insect. The spare pair lay inside a soft gray case, polished, folded, innocent. In my first life, I had placed them in her hands because I was kind, because I was stupid, because I believed borrowed things came back clean. They did come back. After the exam. After I was accused. After she cried into the principal's sleeve and said I had pressured her to lend me her notes. After she claimed I copied her essay structure. After she held up my spare glasses and said, Naomi gave them to me before the exam. She told me to keep quiet. The glasses became proof of a conspiracy I never planned. Nobody asked why a girl with perfect vision needed my spare pair. Nobody checked that Evelyn had secretly ordered contact lenses months earlier. Nobody cared that she had been imitating my handwriting, my hair, my study schedule, my lunch orders, even the way I pushed my glasses up with my middle finger when I was thinking. She had spent 2 years becoming a softer, prettier, more pitiable version of me, and by the time she stole my future, people thought I was the defective original. I picked up the gray case, opened it, and stared at the lenses. Then, without hesitation, I snapped the case shut, slid it into my school bag, and whispered to the empty room, not this time. By 6:20, I had already done 3 things my past self never would have dared to do. First, I photographed both pairs of my glasses beside my admission ticket, my student ID, and the time-stamped morning newspaper lying in the dorm lobby. Second, I walked to the school infirmary, where Nurse Halim was measuring blood pressure for a row of pale exam candidates, and asked her to register my spare glasses under my name as a medical necessity because my prescription was too strong to function without backups. She raised an eyebrow and asked whether I expected a fistfight before the exam. I smiled and said, "No, ma'am. I expect confusion." She looked at me for 3 long seconds, then stamped the form. Third, I went to the exam office and requested that my personal belongings be sealed in a transparent evidence pouch during the exam, including the spare pair, because I had heard rumors of students borrowing prescription items and later disputing ownership. The secretary, Miss Chow, barely glanced up at first, but when she heard disputing ownership, her pen stopped moving. Schools fear cheating scandals the way dry forests fear sparks. Within minutes, my spare glasses were inside a clear pouch with a red seal, signed by me, signed by Ms. Chow, logged at 6:37 a.m. in the examination property register. The entire time, my heartbeat stayed slow. That frightened me more than panic would have. In my first life, I had been soft in all the places the world liked to cut. I explained too much, forgave too quickly, believed apologies were bridges instead of fishing hooks. But Rebirth did not make me brave in a dramatic way. It made me practical. It burned out the part of me that needed to be understood by everyone. When I stepped back into the courtyard, the morning had turned gold, and clusters of students stood around pretending not to revise while their lips moved silently over formulas and essay openings. Parents pressed thermos cups into unwilling hands. Teachers smiled too widely. The school loudspeakers played calming piano music that only made everyone look closer to hysteria. And there, beneath the ginkgo tree near the notice board, was Evelyn's song. The sight of her should have made me furious. Instead, it made the whole courtyard tilt sideways for a moment because she looked exactly the way she had looked before she ruined me. White blouse tucked perfectly into navy skirt, black hair cut to the same length as mine, the same thin ribbon tied at her wrist, the same cheap canvas shoes I wore because I liked how quiet they were on tile. Even her posture was mine, shoulders slightly rounded from years spent over textbooks. But she had added improvements. Her bangs were softer. Her lip tint was warmer. Her eyes were wider, more helpless, less severe behind the round glasses she had started wearing after I won the city essay competition. In my first life, girls joked that we looked like sisters. Boys joked that if you blurred your eyes, Evelyn was the nicer Naomi. Teachers called us the twin stars of Class 1, except one star shone gently and the other, apparently, burned people. She saw me and the performance began. Her mouth parted. Her brows lifted. Her hand fluttered to the frame of her glasses. Then she hurried over with just enough urgency to attract attention, bumping lightly into two classmates so they would turn and watch. "Naomi," she breathed, voice thin with manufactured disaster. "Thank goodness. I've been looking everywhere for you." I adjusted my real glasses with my middle finger, slowly enough for her to notice. "Why?" Her eyes flicked to my bag. A tiny movement. A starving dog seeing meat. "My glasses cracked this morning," she said, and right on cue, she held up a pair with a fracture across one lens. "I can still see a little, but the words swim if they're far away. You always carry a spare, right? Can I borrow yours just for the exam? I'll give them back immediately after. I promise." A few students nearby softened. Poor Evelyn. Sweet Evelyn. Nervous Evelyn, asking the cold top student for one small favor. In my first life, I had hated the awkwardness of refusing more than I loved protecting myself. I had handed them over while people praised me for being generous. This time, I tilted my head and let silence grow. Evelyn's smile twitched. She wasn't used to silence unless she was the one using it. "Naomi," she prompted a little louder. "You do have them, don't you?" "I do," I said. Relief flashed across her face too quickly. I watched it vanish when I continued. "They're sealed with the exam office as registered medical property. I can't lend them." For one perfect second, she forgot to act. Her pupils shrank. Her lips parted, not prettily this time, but like someone whose chair had disappeared beneath her. Then the mask snapped back. "Sealed? Why would you do that?" "Because I need them." "But you're wearing your glasses." "And if these break?" I asked. "Then I need my spare." Around us, the students who had turned to watch began shifting. The scene was not flowing the way Evelyn intended. She had prepared for my reluctance, maybe even for irritation, but not for paperwork. Paperwork is poison to emotional blackmail. It asks names, dates, signatures. It turns tears into evidence. Evelyn pressed the cracked glasses to her chest. "I wouldn't ask if it weren't urgent." "Then go to the infirmary," I said. "They may have emergency readers." "Readers won't match my prescription. Neither will mine." Her fingers tightened around the broken frame. Her voice dropped low. "Meant only for me." You know I can't see the board without them. I looked at her cracked lens, then at the untouched clarity of the other. In my first life, I had discovered too late that the crack was fake, a thin line scratched with a compass point. Her vision had been fine enough to copy my answers from 3 rows away because she had worn clear contacts under the borrowed frames. But this morning something was different. I knew it from the way she leaned half an inch closer than usual, from the faint crease between her brows as she tried to focus on the notice board behind me. She had planned to wear contacts again, yes, but she had also planned to use my spare glasses as part of the stage. Without them, she looked incomplete, like an actor missing a prop that explained the whole plot. Go to the infirmary, I repeated. Good luck, Evelyn. Then I walked past her. Behind me, she said my name once, softly, dangerously. I did not turn. I had already given my first answer of the day. What most people never understood about Evelyn was that she did not begin by stealing big things. She stole edges. A phrase from my essay. A method from my solution. A tiny sketch of a moon I drew beside important formulas. She would laugh and say we were just similar, and everyone liked that explanation because similarity feels harmless until it becomes replacement. In second year, I cut my hair to my collarbones because my mother said long hair made me look tired. 2 days later, Evelyn arrived with the same length, saying it was trendy. I switched from blue ink to black because exam scanners disliked pale strokes. Evelyn borrowed my pen and never returned it, then bought the same brand in bulk. I started summarizing history chapters using 3 color tabs: red for causes, green for consequences, yellow for names that appeared twice. A week later, Evelyn's textbook bloomed in the same colors. When I confronted her the first time, she blinked as if I had slapped her and asked, "Are you saying I'm not allowed to study well too?" That was the genius of her theft. She never took enough at once to be guilty. She took just enough for me to sound petty. By our final year, teachers were comparing our essays and praising Evelyn for becoming more structured, while telling me to be careful because my style was becoming less fresh. It was like watching someone peel my shadow off the ground and wear it as a scarf. Still, I kept helping her because she always appeared at the exact moment when refusing would look cruel. Outside the library during a thunderstorm, beside the printer 10 minutes before submission, at my dorm door with red eyes after her parents fought, in the corridor after she accidentally missed the class announcement. My spare glasses were not the only thing I lent her in my first life. I lent her credibility. I lent her softness from my own reputation. I lent her the benefit of the doubt until she used it as a ladder to stand above me. This time, I walked straight to Class 1's waiting room and sat by the window, away from the cluster around Evelyn's desk. My best friend, Mara Sue, nearly dropped her soy milk when she saw me. "Why do you look like you just returned from murdering a priest?" she whispered. I took the straw from her shaking hand, stabbed it into the carton, and drank. I'm thinking clearly. That's worse. Mara had been the only one who doubted Evelyn in my first life, but doubt without proof is just grief wearing armor. She argued with teachers, searched trash bins for drafts, begged me not to sign the apology letter the school drafted to reduce punishment, and when my mother cried outside the principal's office, Mara stood beside us like a small, furious guard dog. For that alone, I loved her more fiercely now than I had ever told her then. She leaned closer. "Evelyn's saying you refuse to lend her your glasses, even though she might fail. She has eyes. Apparently not functioning ones. Then she should not take a national exam without preparation." Mara's mouth opened, then closed. "Naomi, did you sleep at all?" I looked across the room. Evelyn sat surrounded by sympathetic classmates, holding her cracked glasses in both hands. She was not crying yet. Crying too early wastes power. Instead, she looked pale and brave, the perfect image of a good student abandoned by a colder one. Our homeroom teacher, Mr. Wren, hovered nearby, clearly debating whether to intervene. In my first life, he had adored Evelyn's humility and feared my sharpness. When the cheating accusation came, he said, "Naomi is brilliant, but pride can pressure brilliant children into mistakes." I remembered his voice more clearly than my father's funeral. He walked toward me now, clearing his throat. "Mara Mutarde,
Incoming morality lecture.
Mr. Ren stopped beside my desk, adjusting his tie. Naomi, Evelyn tells me she's having difficulty with her glasses. I heard. You have a spare pair, don't you? I registered them with the exam office. That seems unnecessary. Medical property is necessary. His smile stiffened. The school encourages students to support one another. I smiled back. The school also encourages students to bring their own required materials. Mara coughed into her sleeve. Mr. Ren's eyes sharpened. This is an important day. A small act of kindness can prevent regret. I looked up at him, and the room seemed to disappear for a breath. I saw him older, standing beneath fluorescent lights, avoiding my mother's eyes while telling us the committee had made its decision. I saw Evelyn crying into tissue. I saw my own hands signing a statement I didn't write because they said refusal would make me look guilty. I returned to the present and said, I agree, sir. That is why I was kind to myself. The words landed badly. Not loudly, not dramatically, but badly enough that 3 students stopped pretending not to listen. Mr. Ren's face flushed. Naomi. The door opened before he could finish. Ms. Chow from the exam office stepped inside, holding a clipboard. All candidates for room 7 and room 8 line up in the corridor. Personal item inspection begins in 10 minutes. Her gaze found me and she added, registered medical items will remain with the office unless required after verification. I stood, smoothed my skirt, and walked to the door. Behind me, Evelyn's chair scraped against the floor, a sound so sharp it made half the room flinch. I did not need to look back to know her smile had finally cracked. The first major interruption came before we even entered the exam hall. In my first life, the process had been simple. Show admission ticket, pass metal detector, leave bags in cubbies, sit down, breathe terror until the papers arrived. This time, there was a new table outside room 7 with 2 invigilators, a camera on a tripod, and a sign printed in red, special item registration and visual aid verification. My request had started a chain reaction. Schools adore procedures once someone reminds them lawsuits exist. The candidates groaned, but nobody dared complain properly. Ms. Chow stood beside the table, reading names. Naomi Lin. I stepped forward. She held up the transparent pouch containing my spare glasses. Registered backup prescription glasses, black rectangular frame, left temple marked NL by owner, sealed 6:37 a.m. Candidate confirms. Confirmed. Do you require them now? No, then they remain sealed unless your primary glasses break. If opened, the event will be logged. Understood. She placed the pouch into a locked plastic box. The red seal faced outward like a tiny flag. Then came the part one had not planned but welcomed as if heaven itself had finally learned bureaucracy. Ms. Chow turned to the line. Any candidate requiring borrowed visual aids, prescription lenses, magnifiers, or emergency accommodations must report now. Unregistered exchange of personal medical items inside the exam room will be treated as misconduct. The corridor went very quiet. Evelyn was 6 students behind me. I felt the silence move around her like a hand closing. A boy named Darren whispered, "Borrowed visual aids? Who borrows eyes?" Mara, standing beside me, whispered back, "People who didn't grow their own personality." I nearly smiled. Evelyn stepped forward with admirable timing, looking fragile but honest. "Miss Chow, my glasses cracked this morning. I asked Naomi earlier, but she had already registered hers. Is there any way?" She lifted the cracked pair. The invigilator took them, examined the lens, then frowned. "This crack doesn't pass through the optical center. Can you read the distance chart?" Evelyn hesitated. The distance chart. Nobody had mentioned a distance chart in my first life because nobody cared whether her broken glasses story made medical sense. Now the invigilator pointed to a paper taped to the opposite wall, rows of characters shrinking downward. Evelyn stared. Her throat moved. "Line 4, the invigilator said. Please read it." Evelyn leaned forward. "Not much. Just enough. K9 no. H3, those are letters, not numbers," said the invigilator. A ripple went through the line. Evelyn laughed weakly.
I'm nervous. Sorry.
"It's blurry. Do you have contact lenses?"
Ms. Chow asked.
Evelyn's face changed so slightly that anyone else might have missed it. I did not. In the first life, the contact lenses were her hidden safety net. But now, if she admitted them, her cracked glasses emergency became theater. If she denied them and later someone saw them, it became deception. She chose the middle path. I sometimes wear them, but not today. Miss Chow wrote something down. The infirmary has low-power emergency readers, but they are not prescription substitutes. You may use your own glasses if you accept the visual limitation. The exam board will not delay the paper. Evelyn bowed her head. I understand. Beautiful. Pitiable.
Trapped.
She returned to the line. As she passed me, she whispered through her smile, "You're enjoying this." I looked straight ahead.
No.
I'm documenting it. That was when the second interruption landed. A runner from the exam office hurried down the corridor carrying a stack of sealed envelopes. Miss Chow opened one, read the page inside, and her expression tightened. She spoke to the invigilators in a low voice, but the corridor was so silent we caught fragments. Printing discrepancy, duplicate stem, board correction, announce before start. My pulse flickered. I remembered this too, but differently. In my first life, the correction had been written on the blackboard at the front of the room. In Section 2, Question 18 should read, "Evaluate the narrator's restraint," not "Evaluate the narrator's resistance." It mattered because the essay passage used both concepts, and the wrong word led students down a dead-end interpretation. I had seen the correction clearly. Evelyn, wearing my spare glasses over her contacts from 3 rows behind me, had seen it too. Without them, with her cracked prop and uncertain distance vision, would she? The thought was so sharp I had to press my nails into my palm. I had taken back my spare glasses to prevent her from framing me, not because I expected the exam itself to become the blade. But fate, I was learning, like deficiency. Inside room 7, everything looked exactly as it had in my nightmares. 30 desks in 5 columns, the clock above the blackboard, windows sealed against noise, the faint smell of disinfectant and fear. My seat, 14, was in the 3rd row, 2nd column. Evelyn's seat, by some arrangement she had once called Destiny, was in the 5th row, same column, directly behind my diagonal sight line if I turned slightly to check the clock. In the first life, that position allowed her to copy my answer sheet rhythm, my essay outline, even the order in which I tackled sections. Later, when cameras showed my head turning twice, they said I was checking whether she had finished. Nobody believed I was simply looking at the clock because Evelyn had already told them I was anxious about our plan. This time, I sat down and did not look back. I placed my admission ticket on the top right corner, my pencils parallel, my eraser naked without its paper sleeve because sleeves can hide notes, my water bottle label removed. Around me, students performed their own rituals, cracking knuckles, rubbing temples, whispering formulas into sleeves. The chief invigilator, a tall woman with silver hair and a voice like a closing door, introduced herself as Director Han from the district board. That was new. In my first life, we had ordinary school invigilators. My request must have triggered an external supervisor because of the registered visual aid issue and the correction notice. Candidates, Director Han said, before papers are distributed, you will listen carefully to 2 announcements. First, there has been a minor wording correction in Section 2, Question 18. The corrected phrase is written on the board and will be read aloud twice. Second, due to similarity concerns between alternate forms, candidates must verify the form code on the front page before beginning. Your answer sheet must match your form code. Failure to do so is your responsibility. My skin prickled. Alternate forms. I did not remember that announcement from the first life. Perhaps it had been made, and I had forgotten beneath the trauma. Or perhaps the exam board, alerted by printing discrepancies, had become stricter this time. Director Han turned and wrote in large block characters across the blackboard, Form A, Section 2Q18, Restraint, not resistance. Form B, Section 2Q18, Resistance, not restraint. Verify form code before answering. A murmur rose. Director Han silenced it with one look. My paper arrived face down. I waited until told to begin, then turned it over. Form A. My fingers tightened around my pencil. Form A needed restraint. Form B needed resistance. The two words were almost twins, but not interchangeable. A student who used the wrong one would not merely lose a mark, their entire essay analysis would twist. I lifted my eyes once to the board, slowly, naturally, as any candidate would. The writing was clear. Then, because I am human and rebirth had not turned me into a saint, I let my gaze travel past the board's reflection in the window. Evelyn was squinting. Not dramatically. Not enough for the invigilators to stop the exam. But her chin was angled forward, her brows drawn, her cracked glasses catching a bar of light. She looked from her front page to the board, then back down. Her lips moved. Restraint. Resistance. Form A, Form B. I could almost hear the gears grinding. She had built her entire theft on resemblance, but exams punish people who cannot tell twins apart. The command to begin snapped through the room. Pens moved like rain. I lowered my head and started with Section 1, not too fast, not too slow. In my first life, I had rushed because anxiety made stillness unbearable. Evelyn matched my pace, used my rhythm as a map, and turned in 3 minutes before me to establish priority. This time, I deliberately changed everything. I began with the last reading passage. I skipped the vocabulary cluster. I wrote tiny check marks beside questions I knew she would expect me to answer first. I did not do it to trick her. I did it to become unreadable. There is a difference between hiding a treasure and refusing to leave footprints to your door. 20 minutes in, the room settled into that dense exam silence where every cough sounds criminal. I reached question 18 and read the corrected stem. Evaluate the narrator's restraint in refusing revenge after betrayal. For a moment, the page blurred, not from my eyes, but from memory. Refusing revenge. Betrayal. Restraint. I almost laughed. Then I wrote, restraint is not weakness when it is chosen from strength rather than fear. My answer unfolded cleanly, coldly, beautifully. Behind me, a page turned too hard. Evelyn had reached the same battlefield and chosen the wrong gate. At the halfway mark, the third interruption struck, and it was so absurd that even Director Han's silver composure cracked for half a second. A boy in the front row raised his hand because his answer sheet had a printing smudge over the form code bubble. The invigilator walked over, confirmed it, and announced that anyone with an unclear form code bubble should raise their hand immediately. Nobody moved. Then Evelyn raised hers. Slow, delicate, reluctant.
Directoran approached.
Issue. Evelyn pointed to her answer sheet. I'm not sure whether this says Form A or Form B. Director Han looked down. It says Form B. Evelyn's face strained. But my booklet. Your booklet is Form B. The board says she stopped.
Director Hans gas aixarpanat.
The board contains corrections for both forms. You were instructed to verify. Evelyn swallowed. I thought the correction meant Form A was the correct version. A faint rustle passed through the room, the sound of 29 students trying not to react. Director Han kept her voice low, but I was close enough to hear because the room had become a bowl of silence. There is no correct version. There are alternate forms. Continue with your assigned form. Evelyn nodded, but her hand remained raised, fingers trembling. Director, if I already answered some questions according to Form A, then correct them within the remaining time. But the answer sheet. Manage your time, candidate. Director Han moved away. I did not turn. I did not smile. But my pencil paused above question 31 because justice, when it finally arrives, has a temperature.
Warm.
Almost gentle. Evelyn had not simply misread one word. She had misread the structure of the exam.
Why? Because she was looking for me.
Because in every major exam since second year, she had trained herself to use my choices as her compass. If I highlighted causes, she studied causes. If I predicted a reform essay, she memorized reform quotations. If I skipped a chapter, she skipped it too, then blamed coincidence. Last night in my first life, she had stolen the draft outline from my desk, the one where I wrote possible essay themes and ranked them. I had forgotten until that moment. My stomach tightened. Had she stolen it again this life? I had been too focused on the glasses. Then I remembered what I did after waking. I never returned to the dorm after registering the spare pair. My old outline was still in my drawer. Unless she had stolen it before dawn. The thought moved through me like a draft under a closed door. Evelyn's page flipped again. Faster now.
Panic pace.
I continued working. The exam was not over, and victory is most dangerous when it invites you to watch instead of finish. I finished section 1, checked my bubbles, drank 1 sip of water, and began the essay. The essay topic for Form A asked us to discuss whether silence can be an active form of resistance in public moral crises. Form B, I knew from Director Han's announcement, likely used a paired but different prompt about speech as restraint. 2 mirrored questions. A copycat's nightmare. I wrote from the bones outward. Thesis, contrast, textual evidence, social implication, conclusion. Every sentence had joints. Every paragraph moved. I wrote as if my future sat at the end of the page, waiting to recognize me. Meanwhile, behind me, Evelyn erased so violently that rubber dust rolled under my chair. When the papers were collected, nobody exhaled normally. We emerged from room 7 like survivors of a quiet shipwreck, blinking in the noon light. Mara, who had been in room 8, found me near the water dispenser and grabbed both my shoulders. Why does everyone from your room look like they saw a ghost take the multiple-choice test? Before I could answer, Darren appeared, eyes shining with gossip. Evelyn filled half her sheet as Form A when she had Form B. Mara's grip tightened.
What?
Darren leaned in, delighted and horrified. She asked Director Han during the exam. Out loud. Well, not out loud, but the silence carried. She thought the board was saying Form A was the corrected paper. How do you even make that mistake? Mara looked at me. I drank water. Nervousness affects perception. Naomi, she said slowly. Why do you sound like a court transcript? I lowered the cup. Across the courtyard, Evelyn stood under the stairs surrounded by her usual orbit, but the orbit had widened. People comfort you closely when your misfortune is clean. When it smells like incompetence, they comfort from a safe distance. She was crying now, but not beautifully.
Her nose was red.
Her cracked glasses sat crooked. Mr. Rin stood beside her, speaking urgently to another teacher. I caught pieces, visual difficulty, possible accommodation, student welfare. My body remembered fear before my mind did. In the first life, adults had bent rules around Evelyn like wire around a pearl. If she cried hard enough, procedure softened. If she claimed disadvantage, they searched for someone to blame. Me, usually. I turned to Mara. Stay with me. Her expression changed. She heard something beneath my voice. Always. We walked toward the exam office before anyone called for me, because in my first life, I had waited to be summoned and entered every room already framed as guilty. This time, I knocked first. Ms. Chow looked up from a stack of forms. Director Han sat inside, reviewing incident notes. Mr. Run and Evelyn were not there yet.
Perfect.
Excuse me, I said. I want to make a statement about my registered spare glasses and this morning's borrowing request before any misunderstanding develops. Director Han's pen stopped. Ms. Chow blinked, then motioned me in. Go on. My voice was steady. At approximately 7:10 a.m., before candidate lineup, Evelyn Song asked to borrow my spare prescription glasses. I refused because they are registered medical property and because our prescriptions do not match. Mr. Rin later encouraged me to lend them. I refused again. I am concerned that if Evelyn reports visual difficulty during the exam, my refusal may be misrepresented as causing her disadvantage. Ms. Chow looked at Director Han. Director Han looked at me with the first hint of interest I had seen from her all day. Why would it be misrepresented? In my first life, this was where I would have said too much. I would have cried, explained Evelyn's copying, sounded jealous, sounded unstable. This time I placed my phone on the desk. I have time-stamped photos showing the glasses were mine and sealed before the exam. Nurse Halim stamped the medical registration. I am not accusing anyone. I'm preserving the sequence.
Director Hans Mode Kurva, Barelli.
Preserving the sequence, she repeated. A useful habit. She wrote something down. Your statement will be attached to the visual aid log. Ms. Chow added, for clarity, candidate Song declined infirmary readers and used her own glasses.
Thank you, I said.
As I turned to leave, the door opened and Evelyn walked in with Mr. Ren. Her face was wet, her shoulders small. Then she saw me, and for half a second her tears stopped moving. Mr. Ren frowned. Naomi? Why are you here? Director Han answered before I could, making a statement. You may proceed with yours. The room shifted. Evelyn understood instantly that she had arrived second to a story about herself. It is a terrible thing, for a performer, to enter after the narrator has already named the props. Evelyn tried the soft approach first. She stood before Director Han's desk with both hands twisted around a tissue and explained that she had been under extreme stress because her glasses cracked that morning, that she could not clearly see the board correction, that she had asked a classmate for help but could not receive it, that she respected exam rules and did not want to blame anyone, only hoped the board might consider whether the wording announcement was visually accessible. It was elegant, not too accusatory, not too innocent. A net thrown in silk. Mr. N added that Evelyn was consistently high-performing, that her mistake was inconsistent with her ability, that the school should consider candidate welfare. In my first life, adults used those exact phrases to turn my evidence into attitude and her attitude into evidence. Director Han listened without interruption. Then she asked, Candidate Song, did you notify the exam office of your visual impairment before entering? Evelyn lowered her eyes. I mentioned it during inspection. You were offered emergency readers. They wouldn't match my prescription. You were permitted to use your own glasses. Yes. You were seated in the 5th row. The board correction was written in characters approximately 12 centimeters high and read aloud twice. Did you hear the oral announcement? Evelyn hesitated. I was nervous. I may have misunderstood. Did you verify your form code as instructed? I thought I had. Did you ask for clarification before beginning?
No, Director Angrot.
Then this is a candidate error, not an accessibility failure. Mr. N stiffened. Director Han, she is a minor. The emotional pressure. Director Han's gaze lifted. All candidates are minors under emotional pressure. We do not recalculate scores based on who cries most convincingly afterward. Ms. Chow made a small choking sound and turned it into a cough. Mara, waiting just outside the door, later told me she nearly proposed marriage to Director Han on the spot. Evelyn's tears returned. Faster now. I'm not asking for special treatment. I only couldn't see. Naomi's spare glasses would have helped, but she sealed them, and I didn't want to make trouble. There it was. The hook hidden inside the silk. I looked at Director Han, but she did not look at me. She looked at the visual aid log. Candidate Lin's spare glasses are a prescription medical item. Sharing them would have been inappropriate and potentially unsafe. Also, the prescription mismatch could worsen visual distortion. She turned a page. Candidate Song, what is your prescription? Evelyn froze. I don't remember exactly. Approximate. Maybe -2?
Director Han looked at me.
Candidate Lin? -5.75 in the left. -6.25 in the right, with astigmatism correction.
Maet Gao Winset.
Even Mr. N knew enough to understand that borrowing my glasses would not have saved Evelyn's vision unless her real goal was theatrical legitimacy. Director Han leaned back. Wearing Candidate Lin's spare glasses would not have helped you read the board accurately. It may have made it worse. Evelyn's mouth opened. No sound came. Unless, Director Han added, you had another visual correction method in place. The room went still. Evelyn's hand drifted toward her eye, then stopped. Director Han's voice remained calm. Are you wearing contact lenses, Candidate Song? Mr. N looked at Evelyn. Ms. Chow looked at Evelyn. I looked at the tissue twisting itself apart in her fingers. In my first life, nobody asked this question. The truth had sat on her eyes, invisible because everyone was too busy examining my hands.
Evelyn whispered. No, Director anstud.
Miss Chow, please request Nurse Halim. Evelyn's face changed from pale to gray. Mr. N said, Is that necessary? Director Han did not blink. A candidate has made a visual accessibility claim after an exam incident. Verification is necessary. Nurse Halim arrived in less than 2 minutes, brisk and unimpressed. She asked Evelyn to blink, shine light left and right, look upward, then downward. She did not touch her. She did not need to. Soft contacts, Nurse Halim said. Both eyes. Mr. Run inhaled sharply. Evelyn made a tiny sound. Director Han wrote one sentence on the incident form. Candidate denied wearing contact lenses. Medical observation suggests otherwise. It was not a scream. It was not a slap. It was worse. It was ink. After lunch, the rumor did not spread. It detonated. By 1 p.m., everyone in the senior building knew Evelyn had misread her form code, blamed her broken glasses, denied wearing contacts, then got caught by Nurse Halim. By 1:15, people had begun revising history. That is what crowds do when the person they trusted becomes inconvenient. They dig backward and pretend they always saw cracks. Honestly, Evelyn did copy Naomi's hairstyle first. Didn't she start using the same essay phrases? I once saw her taking photos of Naomi's notes. She borrowed Naomi's cardigan and never returned it. Her glasses always looked fake. Some of them had mocked me for saying similar things months ago. Now they said them with the pleasure of discovery. I did not join. Public opinion is not justice. It is weather. Useful if it blows your way, deadly if you mistake it for ground. I spent the lunch break eating rice balls Mara bought from the convenience store, while sitting on the back steps near the storage building, where nobody could easily perform at us. Mara talked with her mouth full because stress had stripped away manners. So she was wearing contacts. She had contacts and still begged for your glasses. That's not normal. That's theater with props. That's prop crime.
Prop crima. Irrapa.
Very legal term. I'm serious. What else has she been doing? I looked at the ginkgo leaves shaking above the courtyard. In my first life, after the accusation, I learned that Evelyn had built a file on me. Photos of my desk. Screenshots of messages where I sent her summaries. Drafts I had corrected for her. She rearranged every kindness into proof of collusion, every shared resource into proof I needed her work. I wondered how much of that file already existed now. She copies patterns, I said. Not just answers. Habits. Reactions. If she can predict what I'll do, she can stand close enough to benefit and far enough to deny it. Mara stared at me. You sound like you've been investigating her for years. Maybe I should have.
No.
We should now. Carefully. I can do carefully. I gave her a look. She deflated. I can do medium carefully. The afternoon exam was mathematics, and I knew Evelyn would be desperate. Language could be blamed on wording. Math had fewer hiding places. If she performed badly twice, her recommendation score would collapse beyond repair. In my first life, she had not needed to understand every question because she mirrored my pacing. I always solved geometry first to calm myself, then probability, then functions, then the proof question last. She learned that rhythm. She did not copy every answer directly. She used my order to identify which problems were easier, which diagrams to revisit, when to abandon a path. A good parasite does not drain blood in public. It makes you think your fatigue is personal. This time, I changed the rhythm again. When the math paper began, I spent the first 5 minutes doing nothing but reading the whole booklet, hands folded, while half the room attacked question 1. I could feel Evelyn behind me waiting for the scratch of my pencil. I turned a page without writing. Another page. Then I began with the proof question. It was difficult, elegant, involving a circle tangent to a parabola and a hidden substitution most students would only see after wasting 10 minutes. I saw it immediately, because I remembered Mara crying over a similar problem in the first life and me explaining it with chopsticks at dinner. I wrote slowly, leaving no dramatic movements. Behind me, Evelyn turned pages too, but her timing was off. She was guessing my guess. Half an hour later, I skipped to probability, then back to algebra, then to question 3, then to the last multiple choice. I became weather. No pattern.
No handle.
At one point, the invigilator paused beside Evelyn's desk. I heard paper rustle, then Director Han's voice from the doorway. Yes, she had come back for the afternoon session, saying, "Eyes on your own paper, candidate Song." The sentence cracked through the room like a ruler on wood. I did not look back. My pencil did not stop. But something inside me, a knot tied across 2 lifetimes, loosened by one thread. The real trap, however, was never inside the exam hall. It was inside the interview folder. The national recommendation exam, at our school, was not only written papers. Top candidates also submitted a personal academic portfolio and sat for a panel interview 2 days later. In my first life, even after the written accusation, Evelyn's portfolio helped destroy me because half of it looked like mine. Same community research topic, same structure, same volunteer reflection style, same opening quote from a female mathematician I admired. She told the panel we had collaborated casually and that I became angry when she outperformed me. The panel believed her because her folder had earlier timestamps. I later discovered why. She had photographed my drafts before submission and recreated them in a cloud document so her version appeared created first. I had been outplayed by metadata. Rebirth gave me 2 days, and I used the first hour after exams to stop being sentimental about my old work. I went straight to the library computer lab, scanned my entire portfolio, uploaded it to 3 timestamp storage locations, emailed a copy to myself and Mara, printed a document history sheet, and then did something my first life self would have considered cruel. I replaced the draft folder in my dorm drawer with a decoy. Not a fake full of wrong facts that could be called sabotage, but a harmless, outdated version from months earlier, full of abandoned angles, weak transitions, and one glaring structural flaw. It framed my community vision project around equal access through identical resources, an idea my final version rejected because equality and equity are not the same. If Evelyn had already stolen my real work, this would not matter. If she planned to steal again tonight, she would steal a ghost. Mara kept watch outside the dorm while I arranged the drawer, exactly as before. "This feels illegal," she whispered. "Leaving my own old draft in my own drawer?" "When you say it like that, no. When you smile like that, yes." I stopped smiling. She used my kindness as a weapon. I'm putting handles only on things I can afford to lose. At 8:30 p.m., we went downstairs to buy hot noodles, deliberately leaving the room empty. At 8:47, Mara's old phone, hidden behind a stack of laundry with its camera facing my desk, recorded the door opening. Evelyn entered alone. She did not knock. She did not call my name. She moved with the confidence of someone who had done this before. The video showed her crossing straight to my desk, opening the bottom drawer, photographing the decoy portfolio page by page, then pausing when she saw the empty space where the gray glasses case used to be. Her hand hovered there for a long time. Even through grainy footage, I could feel her anger. Then she closed the drawer, left, and gently shut the door behind her. Mara watched the recording twice, silent both times. On the third viewing, she whispered, "Naomi." I nodded. "Now we know. We have to report her." "Not yet." Mara whipped toward me. "What do you mean, not yet?" She broke into our room and photographed an outdated draft that proves nothing except trespassing if the school decides to protect her. If we report now, they'll warn her. She'll cry, delete everything, and become careful. So, what are you going to do? I looked at the frozen image of Evelyn's hand reaching into my drawer. Let her submit what she stole. That night, sleep came in broken pieces, and every dream had fluorescent lights. I saw my mother standing outside the principal's office in the first life, holding the apology letter they wanted me to sign. She had aged 10 years in 2 hours. My mother was a seamstress who measured everything twice because cloth forgives less than people. She raised me alone after my father died, hemming uniforms for richer families and pretending her back did not hurt. When the scandal broke, she did not ask whether I cheated. She asked whether I had eaten. That destroyed me more than doubt would have. I remembered her hands smoothing the apology letter on her lap, the school promising that if I admitted improper collaboration, they might allow me to graduate quietly. I remembered Evelyn's mother, Mrs. Song, sitting across from us in pearls, saying, "Children make mistakes. What matters is whether they learn humility. Humility. From the woman whose daughter wore my life like borrowed skin. In the first life, I signed because I thought survival required swallowing the smaller poison. I did not understand that some poisons reproduce. The signed apology followed me everywhere. Scholarship withdrawn. Recommendation cancelled. University offers gone. Tutoring parents whispering. My mother taking extra work. Me working nights. Studying appeals by day. Collapsing with fever 3 winters later in a rented room where the heater clicked but never warmed. I died listening to my phone vibrate with a message from Mara. I found something. Call me when you wake up. I never woke up. Until now. At 6 a.m., I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep and worry, because I never called early unless something was wrong. Naomi? For a moment I could not speak. Ma, I said, and the word came out too soft. Did you eat breakfast? She asked immediately. I laughed, then cried silently, wiping my face before Mara could wake. Not yet.
Eat.
Exams don't respect empty stomachs. I know. Are you nervous? I looked at the sealed evidence photos, the portfolio timestamps, the video of Evelyn entering my room. Less than yesterday.
Good.
Remember, you don't need to beat everyone. You need to be able to face yourself afterward. In the first life, I could face myself. It was everyone else I could not survive. But I did not tell her that. I promised to eat, hung up, and sat very still until the sun turned the dorm window pale. Then I prepared for the panel interview. Not by memorizing perfect answers, but by preparing proof. In my folder, behind the polished final portfolio, I placed an appendix. Project development timeline, early drafts with handwritten dates, photos from volunteer sessions showing my original materials, email confirmations, library checkout records, and a signed note from the community center supervisor thanking me for revising the project after feedback on equity versus equality. I also printed the still image of Evelyn inside my dorm room, but I did not place it in the main folder. Evidence is like a blade. Drawing it too early lets people dodge. I tucked it into a separate envelope marked only with a date. The second day's exams passed without spectacle, which almost made them more frightening. Evelyn did not ask me for anything. She did not approach Mara. She did not cry in public. She wore a different pair of glasses, thin silver frames that actually suited her face because they were hers, and that made the imitation more obvious in reverse. Without my black frames, without my spare pair as prop, she seemed less like a twin and more like a girl caught between costumes. Rumors followed her, but softly now. She responded with wounded dignity, helping a junior pick up spilled pencils, thanking teachers in a voice just loud enough to be heard, sitting alone under the window with her notes open to signal perseverance. I recognized the move. When exposed, Evelyn did not deny immediately. She purified herself through visible suffering. By afternoon, some classmates had already softened. Maybe she really panicked. Contacts aren't a crime. Naomi was kind of harsh, though. Would it have killed her to lend the glasses before they got sealed? Crowds forget facts faster than feelings. I let them. The interview mattered more. On the morning of the panel, selected candidates gathered outside the auditorium in formal uniforms. The air smelled of floor polish and ambition. Portfolios rested on laps like offerings. Parents waited downstairs. Teachers floated around adjusting collars and calming nerves. Evelyn arrived with Mrs. Song, and for a moment the hallway rearranged itself around them. Mrs. Song was elegant in a cream suit, hair pinned with a pearl clip, smile warm enough to frost glass. She had always treated me like a charity project Evelyn had outgrown. In my first life, after the accusation, she told my mother, Naomi is talented, but talent without character is dangerous. Now she looked at me and smiled. Naomi, dear, I heard there was some unpleasantness with the exam procedures. I hope you and Evelyn won't let a misunderstanding damage your friendship. There is no friendship to damage, I said. The hallway quieted. Mrs. Song's smile held, but her eyes cooled. Evelyn lowered her head.
Mom, don't.
Naomi is under pressure too. Brilliant. She defended me in public to stand above the conflict. I nodded once. Thank you for your performance. Mara made a strangled noise beside me. Mrs. Song's pearl clip caught the light as she tilted her head. Young people sometimes speak sharply when they feel insecure. Older people too, I said. They're just better at making it sound like advice. The teacher supervising candidates hurried over before Mrs. Song could answer. Panel order has been posted. Please review your number. I was candidate 6. Evelyn was candidate 7. Of course. Fate had a sense of theater, or Evelyn's mother had made a request. Either way, it suited me. The panel used 3 rooms. One for document review, one for presentation, one for questioning. Candidates submitted portfolios 30 minutes before entering. I handed mine to Ms. Chow, who now treated me with careful neutrality, and watched Evelyn submit a folder with a pale blue cover. My old color, my old layout, my old 3-tab structure. Mara saw it too. Her nails dug into my sleeve. She used it. She used the decoy, I murmured. How do you know? Because the tab labels are wrong. In my final portfolio, the 3 sections were access, adaptation, impact. In the decoy, months old, they were access, equality, outreach. Evelyn had photographed and rebuilt a dead version overnight, trusting theft more than thought. She had read the wrong exam questions because she depended on my glasses. Now she had prepared the wrong interview answers because she depended on my discarded mind. My presentation lasted 7 minutes, though in memory it felt like one long breath. I spoke about designing math support materials for migrant primary students in the West District Community Center, and how my initial plan failed because I assumed giving every child the same worksheet was fair. Then I explained how I changed the program after observing that students needed different entry points, visual models, bilingual vocabulary cards, oral problem solving, and extension tasks that did not punish speed differences. I showed before and after samples, attendance records, feedback from the supervisor, and a short reflection on academic responsibility. Not performing excellence, but building systems where people could verify progress without relying on personality. One panelist, Professor Liang from the university, leaned forward at that line. Another, a district education officer, asked how I handled students copying procedures without understanding them. My throat tightened at the accidental cruelty of the question. I answered evenly. I learned to ask students to explain why each step mattered. Copying a solution can produce the correct shape, but explanation reveals whether the structure is alive. In my own work, I try to keep drafts and process records so the development is visible. Professor Liang smiled. A mature answer. When I left the room, my knees nearly folded. Mara caught me behind the auditorium curtain and whispered, "You looked terrifyingly calm." I was not calm.
Good.
I was worried you had ascended. Then Evelyn was called. She entered with her pale blue folder pressed to her chest.
The door closed.
We could not hear the first few minutes clearly, only the muffled rise and fall of her voice through the old auditorium wall. She sounded gentle, practiced, wounded in just the right places. Mara paced. I stood still. At minute 6, the first silence came. Not ordinary silence. Panel silence. The kind that follows an answer failing to land. At minute 8, we heard Professor Liang's voice, clearer because it sharpened. Candidate Song, your written portfolio emphasizes equal access through identical resources, but your presentation just mentioned differentiated learning. Can you explain the development between those positions? A pause. Evelyn said something too soft. The education officer followed. Your folder contains no revision timeline after the equality model. Did you implement the differentiated materials or only propose them? Another pause. Chairs shifted inside. My fingers curled around the envelope in my pocket. The supervising teacher glanced nervously at the door. At minute 10, Professor Liang asked, "Why does your Section 2 reflection use a personal anecdote about your mother sewing uniforms for scholarship students? Your parent occupation is listed as corporate procurement director." Mara's mouth fell open. I closed my eyes. The decoy draft. I had forgotten that line. In an early version, I had written about my mother sewing uniforms because that was where my understanding of unequal resources began. Two children wearing the same uniform, one with hidden reinforced seams because their mother knew it needed to last 3 years. I removed it from the final version because it felt too private. Evelyn copied it anyway. Through the door, I heard Evelyn's voice wobble. I was speaking metaphorically. Professor Leong said, "About your mother?" The silence that followed was almost merciful. Then the door opened. Evelyn stepped out, face bloodless, still holding the pale blue folder. Her eyes found me immediately. Not sad now, not soft. Empty, with panic. Behind her, Miss Chow appeared. "Candidate Lin," she said carefully, "the panel requests that you remain available for additional questions after all interviews." The hallway inhaled. Evelyn's fingers tightened on the folder until the cover bent. The wrong questions had followed her out of the exam room and into her own mouth. The additional questions took place after the final candidate left, in a smaller conference room where the air conditioner rattled and the long table reflected everyone's faces faintly, like water too cold to touch. Present were Professor Leong, the education officer, Director Han, Ms. Chow, Mr. Ren, the principal, Evelyn, Mrs. Song, Mara as my requested witness, and me. That was too many people for comfort, and just enough for accountability. The principal began with institutional softness. "We are here to clarify a possible overlap between two candidate portfolios. This is not an accusation at this stage." Mrs. Song placed a hand over Evelyn's. "Of course. The girls have studied together for years. Some overlap is natural." Mara made a sound that might have been a laugh if strangled at birth. The principal frowned. I kept my eyes on the table. Professor Leong opened 2 folders side by side. Mine. White cover, black tabs, final version. Evelyn's. Pale blue. 3 sections copied from my abandoned draft. "Candidate Lin," he said, "your portfolio includes a documented revision from an equality model to an equity model. Candidate Song's portfolio uses the equality model but includes several personal examples that appear to correspond to your background rather than hers. Can you explain whether you share drafts?" "No final drafts," I said. "Evelyn has asked to see my work before, but I stopped sharing portfolio materials after January." Evelyn looked wounded. "Naomi, that's not true. We often discussed ideas. You sent me notes. General notes. Not this folder." Mrs. Song sighed gently. Girls under pressure may forget how much they exchange. Evelyn has always admired Naomi. Admiration can look like similarity. Director Han, bless her, said, "Similarity can also look like unauthorized copying. We are determining which." Mrs. Song's smile thinned. Mr. Rin shifted uncomfortably. The principal asked whether either of us had process evidence. Evelyn produced a few printed drafts from a cloud account, all created the previous night between 9:12 and 11:03 p.m. She explained that she had revised late due to exam stress. Professor Leong asked for earlier development records. Evelyn said she had handwritten notes at home. Mrs. Song said they could provide them later. Then I opened my appendix. I did not speak quickly. Speed sounds defensive. I laid out the timeline. Initial project proposal in November, supervisor feedback in December, equality model draft in January, revision after community center trial in February, differentiated materials in March, final reflection in April, email submission in May. Each document had dates from different sources: emails, printed feedback forms, photo metadata, library booking receipts, supervisor signature. Professor Leong reviewed them without expression. The education officer nodded at the community center letter. The principal's face slowly lost color. Evelyn stared at the documents as if paper had betrayed her personally. Mrs. Song recovered first. "This only proves Naomi developed similar work earlier. It doesn't prove Evelyn copied. They may have influenced each other." "Correct," I said. Everyone looked at me. I reached into my bag and took out the envelope. "That is why I also brought this." Mara stopped breathing beside me. I placed the still image from the dorm video on the table, then the time-stamped clip on my phone. Evelyn entering my room. Evelyn opening my drawer. Evelyn photographing the decoy portfolio. Evelyn pausing at the empty glasses case. The video had no dramatic music, no confession, no villainous monologue. Just a girl moving through another girl's life with practiced hands. The conference room became so quiet I heard the air conditioner click. Mr. N whispered, "Evelyn." She began crying before she answered. Tears first, words after. "I just wanted to check something. Naomi has been acting strange. I was worried she was hiding evidence against me." Director Han leaned forward. "So you entered her dormitory without permission and photographed her documents because you suspected she had evidence." Evelyn realized the trap a second too late. "No, I panicked." Mrs. Song stood. "This recording was taken secretly. Is that even allowed?" "My daughter's privacy." Mara slammed her palm on the table. "Her privacy? In our room." The principal snapped. "Mara." "No," Professor Liang said mildly. "The question is relevant." He looked at Mrs. Song. "A student's expectation of privacy does not generally extend to unauthorized entry into another student's dormitory space." Mrs. Song's face hardened. The pearls were gone now. Only steel remained. Evelyn made a mistake under pressure. Are we destroying a child over ambition? I looked at her, then really looked. In the first life, this woman helped destroy me with that same voice, that same polished grief, that same ability to make consequences sound vulgar when aimed at her own family. My voice came out calm.
No.
We're finally refusing to let her ambition destroy another child. Evelyn's confession did not arrive as a single broken sob. People like Evelyn do not collapse unless collapse is the only remaining strategy. First, she admitted entering the room but claimed she only wanted to see whether I had hidden the glasses because she felt humiliated. Then she admitted photographing the portfolio but claimed she did not use it. Then Professor Liang pointed to identical phrasing, including the line about sewn uniforms, and she said she had accidentally mixed my draft with hers because she was tired. Then Director Han asked why she had denied wearing contacts, and she said she was embarrassed. Then Ms. Chow presented the visual aid log, my morning statement, and Nurse Halim's note. Then the principal, perhaps sensing the school's liability turning its head toward him like a wolf, asked Evelyn directly whether she had ever borrowed or copied Naomi's work without permission. That question broke something, not in Evelyn's conscience, but in her calculation. Too many records. Too many witnesses. Too many lies already contradicted. She looked around the table and saw no soft landing except partial truth. "Everyone copies from everyone," she whispered. "Naomi acts like she invented studying. She makes these perfect notes and then pretends she doesn't want people to notice. Teachers praise her for being original, but she never understands what it's like to be almost as good and still invisible. Almost as good. There it was, the rotten seed beneath 2 years of sweetness. I didn't steal her life," Evelyn continued, voice shaking harder. "I improved what she wasted. She's cold. She doesn't know how to make people like her. I knew how to present things better." Mara lunged halfway out of her chair. I caught her wrist under the table. Not because Evelyn did not deserve anger, but because anger would feed her. Professor Liang watched Evelyn with academic sadness, as if observing a failed experiment in character education. "Candidate Song," he said, "did you copy Candidate Lin's abandoned draft into your submitted portfolio?" Evelyn wiped her face. "Parts." "Did you enter her dormitory to obtain it?" "Yes." "Did you request her spare glasses on exam morning despite wearing contact lenses?" Evelyn's lips trembled. "Yes."
Why?
She looked at me then, and hatred finally came through undisguised. "Because everyone expects Naomi to have the answer. If I had her glasses, people would see us together. They would remember she helped me. If our answers looked similar, it wouldn't be strange." The table chilled. That was not an apology. It was a blueprint. Director Han wrote it down word for word. My first life ghost stood behind me, shaking. This was the sentence I had died needing. Not "I'm sorry," not "I lied," but the mechanism, the proof that I had not imagined the net until it closed. Mr. Rin covered his mouth. Whether from guilt or shock, I did not care. The principal looked like a man calculating how many apologies could fit into one press release. Mrs. Song sat down slowly, her hand no longer on Evelyn's. Love, when filtered through reputation, can become very conditional. Evelyn saw it and began sobbing for real. Mom, I only wanted the recommendation. I was so close. Mrs. Song stared at the table. Be quiet. 2 words. Flat. Terrible. For the first time since Rebirth, I felt no satisfaction. Only the clean ache of a bandage being pulled from infected skin. Evelyn had not been a monster from a storybook. She was worse, a person who could have chosen differently every day and did not. The committee suspended both our interview results pending review because institutions move like old furniture even when the truth is dancing naked on the table. But by evening, the direction was clear. Evelyn's written exams would be scored normally, with no accommodation. Her portfolio was invalidated. A disciplinary panel would review unauthorized dorm entry, false medical statements, and academic misconduct. My portfolio and exam papers would be protected under external review due to the conflict. The principal apologized without using the word sorry. Mr. N tried to speak to me outside the conference room, his face gray. Naomi, I should have handled the situation more carefully this morning. Yes, I said. He flinched. In the first life, I had wanted teachers to confess, to weep, to understand the scale of what their laziness cost me. Now, standing before him 17 again, and somehow older than every adult in the building, I realized most people only regret consequences they can see. Invisible harm is too easy to file under misunderstanding. Mr. Run removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Evelyn was under a lot of pressure. I thought encouraging generosity. You thought my boundary was less important than her comfort. He had no answer. Sir, I said, not unkindly, next time a student says no, maybe don't turn it into a character test. I left him in the corridor. Mara waited near the vending machine with 2 cans of coffee and the expression of someone who had aged 6 years in one afternoon. I want to celebrate, she said, handing me a can, but I also want to bite someone. Both can be valid. Your emotional range is terrifying today. We sat on the steps outside the auditorium as the sky bruised purple. Students had mostly gone home, but small clusters lingered, pretending not to watch the administrative office. News had already escaped. The version traveling fastest was not accurate, but it was close enough to protect me. Evelyn wore contacts, begged for Naomi's glasses, misread the exam, copied Naomi's portfolio, got caught by secret video. By tomorrow, someone would add a hidden camera in my glasses, a forged admission ticket, a dramatic slap. Rumors love decoration. Mara popped her coffee open. What happens now? We wait. I hate waiting. Me too. Do you think she'll try something else? I watched the office windows glow. In my first life, after Evelyn won, she avoided me in public but sent one message from an unknown number. You should have been less proud. I had deleted it, then spent years wishing I had kept it. Yes, I said. Cornered people look for exits. Mara leaned back on her elbows. Then we blocked them. I looked at her, this girl who had believed me before proof, whose loyalty had survived a future she did not remember. Thank you, I said. She made a face. Don't get sentimental. It makes me nervous. I laughed, really laughed, and the sound startled both of us. For a moment, the courtyard was not a battlefield. It was just school again, with vending machine coffee, exam dust, and evening wind lifting old posters from the walls. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. My laughter stopped. The message contained only 6 words. You think you already won? Mara saw my face and sat upright. What? I turned the screen toward her. Her eyes narrowed. That better not be who I think it is. Another message arrived. Check what your mother signed today. The world narrowed to the phone in my hand. I called my mother. No answer. I called again. Still no answer. The old terror returned so violently, I nearly doubled over. In the first life, Evelyn's mother had not only attacked me through school, she attacked through adults, through paperwork, through the places poor families cannot afford mistakes. My mother had once signed a settlement acknowledgement she did not understand because the school presented it as routine. It became the apology letter's companion blade. This life, while I was in interviews, had Mrs. Song reached her? Had someone tricked her into signing a statement? Mara was already moving. Taxi.
Now.
We ran through the back gate because the front was crowded with parents and gossip. In the taxi, my phone finally rang.
Ma.
Naomi, I'm sorry. I was with a customer. What happened? Her voice was normal. Too normal. Did anyone visit you today? From school? From the Song family? A pause. Fabric rustled on her end. A woman came to the shop. Elegant. She said her daughter was your friend. My blood turned cold. Did you sign anything? No, I closed my eyes. Mara grabbed my sleeve in relief. Then my mother added. She wanted me to. She said there was a misunderstanding and parents could resolve it privately before it damaged both girls. She brought a letter saying you and Evelyn often shared study materials willingly. You didn't sign? Of course not. I told her my daughter reads every label on instant noodles before buying them. She would never ask me to sign something I hadn't shown her. I made a sound between a laugh and a sob. My mother continued, sharper now. Naomi, what is happening? I told her enough. Not rebirth, not death, not years of ruin folded backward into one morning, but enough. Evelyn entered my room, copied my portfolio, lied about the glasses, and now her mother was trying to create a parent statement. My mother was silent for a long time. Then she said, come home. I have to stay near school for the review. Then I'm coming to you. Ma, the shop. Cloth can wait. My daughter cannot. She hung up before I could argue. The taxi pulled up outside her shop 20 minutes later anyway because I needed to see the letter. She stood in the doorway, wearing her measuring tape around her neck like a general's sash, holding a cream envelope between two fingers as if it smelled bad. I hugged her so hard she laughed in surprise, then stiffened because I was shaking. Naomi.
I've fine.
No, you're not. She brought us inside, locked the door, and spread the letter on the cutting table. It was exactly what I feared, a pre-written mutual clarification stating that Evelyn and I had shared notes, drafts, and exam strategies throughout the year, that any overlap was due to collaboration, that the glasses request was made openly and innocently, and that both families wished to avoid disciplinary escalation. No direct lie looked dramatic. That made it dangerous. My mother had written across the bottom in red tailor's chalk, refused. Bring official school stamp. Mara stared. Auntie, you are iconic. My mother frowned. I am angry. Also iconic. I photographed the letter, envelope, and Mrs. Song's business card tucked inside. Then I emailed everything to Director Han, Ms. Chow, Professor Liang, and myself with a subject line, attempted parent statement regarding active misconduct review. My mother watched me type, eyes dark. Has this girl hurt you before? The question opened a door inside me, and behind it stood the first life, full of years she could not remember. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to lay my head on the cutting table and confess that I had missed her after she died from overwork in that other timeline, that I had died alone, that I had come back carrying both our graves inside my chest. Instead, I said, she tried. My mother touched my cheek. Her fingers smelled like soap and cotton. Then she failed. For the first time since waking, I believed that might be true. Mrs. Song's attempted letter changed the review from a school embarrassment into a containment emergency. By the next morning, the district board took direct control. Director Han requested all communication from the Song family be preserved. The principal, who had spent years polishing the school's reputation until it reflected only flattering angles, suddenly discovered a deep passion for procedural integrity. Evelyn was removed from the candidate list pending investigation. Her dorm access was suspended. Her mother's visitor privileges were revoked. Mr. N sent a class message reminding everyone not to spread rumors, which naturally spread them faster. But the sharpest consequence came from the exam board's technical review. Because Evelyn had raised visual accessibility claims, her exam room footage was examined. Not just the moment she asked about form codes. The whole paper. The report found repeated attempts to look toward my desk during both language and mathematics exams, though no answer copying could be confirmed due to distance and my changed pacing. It also noted that she began multiple sections immediately after I turned pages, then erased or skipped them when my movements did not align with expected order. In plain words, the report could not say she copied, but it said she behaved like someone trying to. Sometimes that is enough to break the spell. I received my protected scores 3 days later in a sealed office with my mother beside me and Mara vibrating like a trapped bee outside the door. Language, 97. Mathematics, 95. Comprehensive reasoning, 96. Interview, pending but recommended for reinstatement. The numbers looked unreal. In my first life, I never saw my official scores because disqualification erased them before they could become mine. I stared until my mother squeezed my hand. "You did this," she said. I thought of the younger Naomi who had studied until her eyes burned, who had shared notes with a girl who smiled like spring rain, who had believed hard work was a shield. "She did this," I whispered. "Who?" I shook my head.
Me.
"Before." My mother did not understand, but she nodded anyway because mothers often accept truths without all the vocabulary. Evelyn's score report leaked the same afternoon, though officially nobody knew how. Her language paper had collapsed around the Form A/Form B confusion. Her essay answered the wrong conceptual frame for her assigned booklet, mixing restraint and resistance until the argument contradicted itself. Her mathematics score was mediocre, not disastrous, but far below recommendation range. Her portfolio was invalidated. Her interview marked incomplete. By evening, her name had vanished from the candidate board. Mine remained, not at the top with fireworks. Just there, black letters on white paper, ordinary and undeniable. Naomi Lin. Recommendation review advanced to final approval. I stood before the board after everyone left and touched the edge of the paper. Mara sniffed beside me. "I'm not crying. The board is dusty. The board is behind glass. Then the glass is dusty." I let her lie. Behind us, footsteps stopped. I turned. Evelyn stood at the end of the corridor. No crowd. No mother.
No cracked glasses.
Her real silver frames sat on her face. Without performance, she looked younger and meaner. "Are you happy?" she asked. The corridor stretched between us, lined with trophy cases full of names nobody remembered. I considered lying. Then I said, "Yes." She flinched as if honesty were cruelty. "You ruined me." "No," I said. I took back my glasses. "You read the rest wrong by yourself." Her face twisted. "You set me up with that portfolio." "I left my own old draft in my own drawer." "You knew I'd take it." "I knew you might." "That's the same thing." I walked toward her until only a few steps remained. In the first life, I had met her in this corridor after the verdict. She wore my spare glasses then, not because she needed them, but because she wanted one final image burned into everyone's mind. Poor Evelyn, still carrying evidence of Naomi's pressure. I had asked why she did it. She said, "Because you made it easy." This time, I said it for her. I made it easy. Her eyes widened. "What?" "I made it easy for you to choose. That's not the same as making you steal." For once, Evelyn had no immediate answer. I stepped past her. She grabbed my sleeve. Mara moved, but I held up a hand. Evelyn's grip trembled. "Naomi," she whispered, and the old softness tried to return, cracked but searching for a seam.
"Please.
Tell them we shared ideas. Not everything. Just enough. My mother won't even look at me. I can't go home like this." There it was. Not remorse. Only need wearing remorse's coat. I looked down at her hand on my sleeve. "Let go. Please. Let go, or I'll call Director Han." Her fingers opened. I walked away with Mara beside me. Behind us, Evelyn said, "You'll regret being this cold." I did not turn. I already tried being warm. Final approval came 1 week later, on a rainy afternoon that made the whole city smell like wet concrete and ginkgo leaves. The district board reinstated my interview, confirmed my portfolio authenticity, and awarded me the top recommendation slot for the university preparatory program. The school held a small ceremony in the lecture hall, smaller than it would have been if no scandal had occurred, but larger than the principal probably wanted. My mother sat in the front row wearing her best gray coat. Mara sat beside her holding tissues she pretended were for allergies. Mr. Ren read my name with a voice carefully scrubbed of emotion. Professor Liang, invited as external panel representative, shook my hand and said quietly, "Keep preserving the sequence, Miss Lin. Memory is powerful, but records make it useful." I accepted the certificate. The applause rose, hesitant at first, then fuller. I looked out at the faces, classmates who had doubted me, teachers who had preferred peace over truth, students who now watched me like I had returned from somewhere dangerous, carrying a map. In a sense, I had. Evelyn was not there. Her family withdrew her before the disciplinary decision became public, citing health reasons. The official notice used phrases like voluntary transfer and personal circumstances. But everyone knew enough. Her mother's attempted parent letter had angered the board more than the copying itself, because institutions forgive student panic faster than adult interference. Mrs. Song's company also received inquiries from 2 scholarship sponsors she had pressured in the past. That part 1 did not cause. People who build webs rarely notice how many threads lead back to their own door. After the ceremony, I found a small envelope tucked into my locker.
No stamp.
No name. Inside was a photograph of Evelyn and me from second year, standing side by side after the city essay competition. I wore my black glasses. She did not yet wear any. On the back, someone had written, "You were first because I let you be." I stared at it for a long moment, then laughed. Not loudly, not kindly, just enough. Mara peered over my shoulder and swore. "She is insane." "No," I said, tearing the photo in half. "She's consistent." I dropped it into the bin. Then I took the gray case from my bag, opened it, and looked at my spare glasses. For weeks, they had felt like evidence, weapon, symbol, curse. Now they were only glasses. Plastic, metal, lenses shaped to help me see. I put them in my locker beside my textbooks and locked the door. Mara watched me. "You're leaving them there?" "Yes." "After all that?" "They're mine," I said. "They don't need to hide." That evening, my mother closed the shop early and made noodles with too much garlic because celebration in our house always smelled slightly medicinal. We ate at the tiny kitchen table while rain tapped the window. She asked what I would do next. In the first life, that question had become unbearable because next was always smaller than before. Smaller schools, smaller rooms, smaller dreams. This time, next opened outward. "I'll study," I said. My mother laughed. "Of course. Anything else?" I thought of revenge, how it had filled my lungs for days, how necessary it had been, how dangerous it would become if I mistook it for life. "I'll stop lending things to people who only return blame." She nodded solemnly. "Good. And I'll buy new glasses." "Also good. Those frames are too severe for your face." I gasped.
Ma. What?
Truth is truth. We laughed until the noodles went cold. Months later, after the recommendation program began, I saw Evelyn one last time. It was not dramatic at first.
No Sander.
No crowd. No panel waiting to judge. Just a city bus station at dusk, the sky bruised pink over the road, students scattered with backpacks and bubble tea, exhaust rising in gray ribbons. I was carrying a stack of prep books and wearing my new glasses, thin dark green frames my mother said made me look less like a judge and more like a person. A bus pulled away, and Evelyn stood on the other side of the shelter. Her hair was shorter. Her silver glasses were gone. She wore contacts openly now, no imitation frames, no ribbon at her wrist, no canvas shoes like mine. For a second, I almost did not recognize her without pieces of me attached. Then she turned, and our eyes met. She looked thinner, sharper, but not broken. People like Evelyn rarely break in the way their victims need them to. They adapt. They find new rooms, new audiences, new names for old hunger. She crossed the pavement slowly. I could have walked away. I did not. "I heard you got the slot," she said. "Yes." "Congratulations." The word came out like a coin dropped into mud. "Thank you." She looked at my new glasses. "They suit you." "I know." Her mouth tightened. You're different now. I almost said, you have no idea. Instead, I said, no. I'm just harder to borrow from. Something flickered in her face. Anger, shame, maybe grief for the version of me she could manipulate. Do you ever wonder, she asked, if we could have been friends if things were different? The question was so audacious I smiled. Things were different. You changed them. She looked away. Buses sighed in and out of the curb. A child laughed near the vending machine. Life, rude and ordinary, continued around us. Evelyn said, I was scared of being nothing. For the first time, I heard something close to truth without strategy. But truth is not the same as repair. So was I said. I just didn't make that your problem. Her eyes shone, but she did not cry. Perhaps she had finally learned tears were not keys. My bus arrived. I stepped toward it, then paused. Evelyn. She looked up. When you read the wrong exam questions, you kept trying to force my answer onto your paper. That was always your mistake. Not the glasses. Not the form code. Not the board. You never wanted to see, clearly. You wanted to see through me. The bus doors opened. I climbed on, paid, and found a seat by the window. Evelyn remained under the shelter, growing smaller as the bus pulled away. I did not wave. I did not forgive her. Forgiveness, I had learned, is not a toll you must pay before crossing into peace. Sometimes peace is simply leaving with your own name, your own work, your own eyes. As the city blurred past, lights stretching across the wet glass, I took off my glasses and cleaned them with a cloth from their case. For a moment, the world softened into color without edges. Then I put them back on. Everything sharpened. The road, the rain, my reflection in the window.
Mine.
Completely mine.